Struggling nurse donates blood to an emergency patient only to learn he's a CEO. A single dad who comes back with a life-changing proposal. Where's Carter? I need her now. The sharp command cracked through the chaos of the emergency room like thunder, nearly drowning out the real storm outside. Rain pounded the windows in relentless sheets, the night turning into a mess of howling wind and flashing lights. I'm here. Nancy Carter's voice rose above the noise as she rushed around the corner, wiping her damp hands on her scrubs. Her blonde hair was tied back in a bun that had loosened over the course of her shift, soft strands falling around her face. Her blue eyes, rimmed with fatigue, still held a calm, unwavering light. Dr. Harris turned toward her, his brows furrowed beneath his rain-speckled glasses. Trauma 1. Male, mid-40s. Massive internal bleeding from a car crash on the I-7. Blood type AB negative. We've got nothing in the bank. Nancy didn't hesitate. I'm AB negative. You just pulled a 36-hour shift. You can barely stand. He might not live to see morning, she interrupted, already stepping toward the trauma bay. I'll be fine. Dr. Harris paused, then nodded. Prep her for draw.
Now.
Inside Trauma 1, the scene was grim. The man on the stretcher was unconscious, skin ghostly pale against the blood-soaked sheets. Monitors beeped in warning tones as nurses swarmed around him. Rain dripped from the edge of the stretcher, where paramedics had wheeled him in without pause. His suit jacket had been cut open, revealing a crisp, white shirt now darkened with blood. Nancy's eyes locked on the man's face as she sat beside him, extending her arm. Strong jaw, high cheekbones, a faint scar beneath his chin. Even in this state, there was something composed about him, like the chaos around him had no claim. She looked away only when a nurse tapped her arm, tying the band and preparing the draw. Here we go, the nurse said gently. You sure about this? Nancy nodded. Let's do it. The needle slid in. She barely flinched. Minutes passed like hours. The room was all motion, compressions, suction, commands shouted and obeyed. But Nancy sat still, watching the man's chest rise and fall beneath the oxygen mask. His breaths were shallow. His face, despite its calm, told a story she couldn't yet read. Years of weight carried silently. Her vision blurred slightly, her head light from the donation. She pressed her free hand to the edge of the gurney to steady herself. You holding up? Harris asked, concern flashing in his eyes. I'm okay, she said softly, but her body was screaming for rest. Her legs ached. Her arms tingled. Every nerve felt like it was moving underwater. Still, she kept her gaze on the man's face. She didn't know his name, didn't know where he had been going when his car flipped off the interstate, or why the paramedics looked at each other with something close to reverence when they loaded him in. But she knew one thing, she didn't want him to die. A nurse stepped beside her. We've got enough. You can rest now. Nancy nodded slowly, letting them remove the needle. As the flow of her blood stopped, she leaned back against the chair, her eyes heavy as stone, still fixed on the stranger's face. The machine stabilized barely. Dr. Harris let out a breath. We might have bought him time. As they wheeled him towards surgery, Nancy sat alone for a moment, listening to the echo of retreating footsteps. Outside, the rain had softened into a gentle patter, like the world exhaling. She glanced down at the bandage on her arm, then at the tray, where a full, warm blood bag lay ready. She looked again at the man's face as the stretcher disappeared around the corner. Something about that moment settled in her bones. A quiet certainty, deep and strange. She did not know yet that this man was Albert Blake, one of the most powerful CEOs in the country. She did not know that he had a son, that he was alone. She only knew one thing. She had saved his life. And somehow, in a way she could not explain, he had just changed hers. Continues into recovery. The silent hospital days, their unexpected meeting in the park with Caleb, and Albert's eventual return with a life-changing proposal, blinked, surprised. You want me to work for you? I want you to help him, Albert replied. He's bright, kind, but the world moves too fast, too loud. He needs someone who can move at his pace. You did that without trying. Nancy looked down at the card. It's a lot to ask. I know, he said. I'm offering full salary, flexibility, housing on site if you prefer, whatever makes it possible. She glanced up. Housing. Albert gave a small nod. We live in Fairwood. It's quiet. You'd have your own space. Nancy considered it. She had grown used to solitude, her tiny apartment, her routines. But when she thought of Caleb's wide eyes, his chalk drawings, his gentle silence, something tugged at her. "I'll come," she said quietly, "but only because he needs someone." Albert's lips curved into the faintest smile. "I thought you might say that." Fairwood Estate was nothing like she expected. It wasn't a cold mansion or a sterile fortress. It was warm, understated, surrounded by trees, a wide porch, sun-faded stone, tall windows filled with books and light. Nancy moved in that weekend. At first, everything was formal. Albert kept his distance, polite but measured. But Caleb greeted her with his box of chalk and a quiet tug on her sleeve. That was enough. They fell into rhythm. Mornings began with walks in the garden. Afternoons with quiet drawing or music therapy. Evenings, Caleb sat beside her as she read aloud or helped him with word puzzles. Albert often lingered nearby, watching from doorways, listening without interrupting. One evening, Nancy found herself in the kitchen, fumbling through a cabinet. "You're out of Earl Grey," she muttered aloud. Without a word, Albert appeared at the doorway, handing her a steaming cup. She took a sip. It was perfect, 2 sugars, no milk. Exactly how she liked it. "You remembered?" she asked, surprised. Albert shrugged, a small smile tugging at his lips. "I noticed things." Later that week, Nancy discovered the estate's library. It was beautiful, floor-to-ceiling shelves, a velvet reading chair, and in the corner, a black baby grand piano, dusty from disuse. One quiet night, when the house was still, she sat down and lifted the lid. Her fingers trembled at first. Then the notes came, soft, hesitant, then flowing. It was the melody she used to play for her sister, gentle and sorrowful, like a memory wrapped in light. Outside the door, Albert stood in the hallway, hidden in shadow. He didn't move, didn't speak. He just listened, hand resting lightly against the frame. The music said more than words ever could. And for the first time in years, the house felt like a home.